Well, welcome to question 108 of the secundae. The topic for this lecture is vengeance, and I am Dr. Thibault. So, vengeance is a very narrow topic. Unlike many things they have a lot of sections and subsections and species. We are dealing with we're looking at the cardinal virtue of justice. Under the cardinal virtue of justice are the potential parts of justice, which includes observance, which is how uh, you treat people of dignity within your community. Um, Under this section of observance is a sub-virtue of vengeance. And now there's no there's no vice associated with it. It's just a question 108, vengeance. Um, Now, defined as inflicting corrective punishment, a type of penal punishment on a sinner. Um, Now, if you just look at it, you may think, well, vengeance sounds like it should be a vice, not a virtue. So uh, just stick around, and you'll get the distinction why vengeance is a virtue, not a vice. Uh, Vengeance, according to this first article, says well, vengeance is not uh, essentially evil or unlawful. Uh, it has a practical, um, good purpose behind it. Uh, Revenge is unlawful. This kind of idea, when we think of the vice part of it, revenge is unlawful if it takes pleasure in another person's punishment. If it involves hating one who hates him, it's still a sin. So if you say, well, I hate this person because they hate me, Jesus didn't say love your enemies unless they hate you. um, if they're your enemy, uh, then it's fairly obvious that they probably hate you, which is why you have to love them in return. So the gospel is a bit of a challenger on that one. You can't hate someone. And vengeance is not the same as our current idea of revenge. Right? Our view of revenge is if somebody does something bad to us, I will do something equally as bad in return to them or worse. Um, there's an element of the appetites in there. Right? Somebody wronged me and now I'm angry and now I'm going to embarrass them. I'm going to shame them. I'm going to revile them. There's some sense of equality, but it's emotionally driven, and there's often a sense of hate in there. That is not allowed. That would be unlawful on multiple reasons, according to St. Thomas. Um, if the avenger's intentions be directed chiefly to some good, to be obtained by means of a punishment of the person who has sinned, the vengeance may be lawful. So if you'll hear this repeatedly, if vengeance is used as a medicine for the person who has wronged someone, then it is directed towards their good and the good of the common good. If vengeance is aimed at good, then it is a virtue, right? If it's aimed at um, getting back at somebody, then that's more like a revenge, which would then be unlawful because it's rooted more in hate or anger or the emotions. So, who can you use vengeance on and why is it used? So, if a person takes vengeance uh, outside the order of divine appointment, he or he usurps what is God's and therefore sins. So this puts a very strong limitation on vengeance. Um, this means, if somebody has wronged me, it's not necessarily, and it's probably not my position to exact that punishment upon them, uh, because it could be seen as angry or hateful, and it's really not part of my divine appointment. Now, we've covered covered this already. When it comes to divine appointments, who has divine appointments? And you might want to look to the section on religion to see this. People have appointments over those for whom they have valid authority. So if we want to look at that, bishops have valid authority over the faithful of their diocese. Parents have valid authority over their children. Employers have authority over their employees in regards to employment issues. Politicians have authority. St. Thomas says the princes. The princes have authority over our political lives, and because of that, they give power to the judges to enact justice in our society. Therefore, who has the authority when there has been a civil wrong of some kind? Well, judges who are appointed by the princes, or presently our politicians who appoint judges. They have the right, because they have the proper authority. Because they have the proper authority, the particular divine appointment is allowed. They act for the common good. God allows them to act on behalf of the common good. If there has been a wrong within your family, then the parents get to be the judge of that. It's a church matter, then it's the bishop or the pastor who has some say of that. So it all depends on where the wrong has taken place, in what context, and who has the valid authority to make a decision about it, who has the valid authority to make a judgment. Clearly, depending on the level of authority, depends on what the possible judgment could be, right? If within a family somebody has wronged a member of the family, somebody has made a mistake in the family, the father or the mother cannot enact the death penalty, right? That's not the proper authority within the structure of the family. They can send you to your room. They can take away your allowance, right? There's some things they can do. You're grounded, but not the death penalty. Same with the church. The church doesn't have the authority to put people to death, but they have the authority of excommunication. So the proper punishment is consistent with the forum in which the authority is expressed. So that's important to keep that context in mind. So when do I have authority over my neighbor in order to punish my neighbor who has wronged me? Never. Right? I have no authority over my neighbor. I don't have authority over my equals within society. So therefore, if you've been wronged, you have to pass it up the chain of command to the judge who acts on the part of the common good. Then that's the proper authority. So therefore, I cannot take vengeance. I have no children. I can't take vengeance on them. I'm not an ecclesiastical authority. I have no vengeance. I'm not a politician. So in my position, I have no ability to take vengeance on anyone. So this is not for me, right? Might not be for you either, to be worrying about vengeance. But it's for us to pass it, chain of command. Now we can. This has come up before as well under religion, but we can bear wrongs done to us patiently, right? Christ actually asks us to bear our wrongs patiently, but we cannot endure wrongs inflicted on God and our neighbor. Therefore, we can't say, well, my neighbor was robbed. Well, we must forgive that whoever stole from my neighbor. Well, it's not in my position to forgive my neighbor's thief. I can forgive somebody who stole from me. I can't forgive somebody who stole from somebody else, right? I can't forgive somebody who's insulting God, right? If somebody is blaspheming and being irreligious, I can't say, oh, well, it doesn't bother me. It wasn't intended to offend me, therefore I can't forgive something that wasn't an offense to me, right? Like saying, well, I'm not offended by the N word. As a white as a white guy, it's not really my position to say, go ahead, say it all you want. It doesn't offend me. Not the target of the insult, so I can't forgive something that wasn't directed at me. Same with this. So vengeance, in some ways, has to be carried out unless the person who it's directed towards directly is able to forgive it. However, this is a moral virtue, so vengeance is the proper means. It's right in the middle of what is appropriate. So somebody who is too excessive in terms of vengeance is too aggressive. They're going after too much. They're too sensitive. Um, if one is too deficient in vengeance, then they let somebody walk all over them. Then they don't stand up for themselves at all. So vengeance is the proper balance of um, not being too sensitive, but being sensitive enough. The proper balance. Now, vengeance is a special virtue. Of course, it is. Everything's a special virtue uh, um, within the field of justice, typically. Uh, vengeance, we resist a force or wrong, and in general, whatever is pure. Uh, Animals have a special inclination of nature to remove harm. So these are some of these steps. As animals, we try to avoid pain, right? A very basic thing. Even plants, in some regards, try to avoid pain, right? Try to avoid pain. Therefore, vengeance is useful because vengeance inflicts pain in some way. It causes us to avoid that pain, right? It might make us act correctly. Look at the Kohlberg hierarchy of needs. Right? One of the earliest stages um, is avoiding punishment. Right? Why does a young child do the right thing? They don't want to be punished. Right? Some of that remains with us for our entire lives. It's a very basic uh, hierarchy of needs is to avoid punishment, right? Avoid pain. Therefore, we should use vengeance in a way that goads us towards charity. Right? Some people don't have the higher goals, but they do still don't want. They still want to avoid pain, so they might do what's right just to avoid the pain. So we can use that. That can be a useful tool to put people in the right direction. Pain could be loss of freedom or loss of money, or it could be actual physical pain, but it directs people towards the good. Um, and all virtues, which includes vengeance as a virtue, proceeds from charity. Saint Gregory the Great points out that all virtues have at their root charity. You can't have the fruits of the virtues if your roots of that tree are not in charity. St. Gregory has wonderful lines. Vengeance is virtuous. So vengeance is lawful and virtuous insofar as it tends to the prevention of evil. Right, that is one of the purposes we have of jail. Right, some of our theories on the justice system is that punishment of the justice system should um, try to establish some type of equality, right, to have some equality of a wrong that was done. It should also deter, right, and this is this section here, the prevention of evil, to deter people from doing wrong. Right? Some people might not do wrong just because they don't want to go to jail. Good enough. Whatever keeps people from doing evil, that's fine. And then also the penitential aspect, that the person can be reformed in a penitential way. So those are the kind of the three classical approaches to the justice system: equality, deterrence, and penance. Um, so this focuses on this penitential, the prevention part, the deterrent part. Now, some who are not influenced by the motive of virtue are prevented from committing sins through fear of losing things which they love more than the things that they seek. So, do you want the $10 from, he's going to steal $10. You want the $10 more, or you you might end up in jail for the next 5 years. You want the $10 worth 5 years in jail, right? Stealing this car, going out joyriding on a Friday night with your friends in a stolen car, is that more fun than potentially 10 years in jail if you get caught? It is putting, if you can't attract people with the carrot, you direct them with the stick. Right? That's that kind of mentality. Hopefully, people are striving towards virtue. That's why they do the right thing, because it's the right thing. But if they don't do the right thing because it's the right thing, right, we go down that Kohlberg hierarchy of needs, the Kohlberg moral theory, and you direct people with the stick. Right? That's the idea. It's not to be cruel, but it's to put people in the right direction for the common good and for their own goal, their own salvation. Right? Again, the purpose of a good politician, a good prince, would be to direct people towards their proper end, which is beatitudo. The purpose of laws is to direct man towards virtue. Right? So if they don't seek it on their own, then you kind of force them a bit in that direction. Sometimes the wicked can be uprooted by death, not only without danger, but even with great profit to the good. In this, St. Thomas is okay with civil use of the death penalty. Right? This would not be so much medicine for the person who's being put to death as much as medicine for other people who were thinking, contemplating doing something similar. Right? If a person is contemplating an act of terror in some way, well, if they know they're going to be put to death, maybe they won't, right? And nowadays, people are so suicidal. It's hard to think of that might be a deterrent, but some people maybe are deterred with the idea, well, I'm not going to go and shoot people at my work because I don't want to be put to death myself. If that's what keeps people from shooting innocent people at work, then so be it, right? Well, there is some degree of looseness within this, particularly the European uh, uh, penal system. This idea that there is no death penalty in most of Europe, and the strictest sentence is a life sentence, and a life sentence is defined as 25 years, as an example. I think that somebody could be a serial killer at 20 years old. It could be out walking the streets by the time they're in their mid 40s. Seems like might not be properly punished, from my American perspective. Not that I would be in favor of the death penalty, but to think that at 45 you can move on with your life after you may have killed dozens of innocent people seems a little bit dangerous. Um, Punishment of this life is more of this life are more of a medicinal character. Yeah, so this is this line that's over and over again. This idea that really punishment is used as a medicinal character. It's not. It doesn't work best when you kill the person, right? Maybe the person has a deathbed conversion, it brings about that penance. Um, but how do you know that that's going to bring about the penance and not a lifetime in prison, right? We don't know. How do you know what's going to direct a person towards penance? We don't know. Sometimes it's death, sometimes it's life, right? There's no guarantee either way. So the more charitable way is the appropriate, probably the more appropriate way. You really want to bring people to wholeness and healing and penance, and to avoid sinning. That's the ultimate good. But delicate matter on how to use medicine, right? That's true of all medicine, right? You just don't. Well, the person has a cold, give them chemo. Well, you don't. You don't go to the most extreme thing to start with. Proper diagnosis is appropriate. Um, when we look to vengeance, how does it, who can we provide vengeance for? Now, St. Thomas spends his last article on voluntary versus involuntary sinners. And this idea of sinner, he's really talking about people who have done wrong in some way. That's what he means by sinner. Um, so the most obvious answer is, the vengeance should be taken only on those who have deserved it voluntarily. St. Thomas is using that from St. Augustine. Um, those who have chosen to sin, those are the ones who vengeance can give proper medicinal qualities, right? Um, it can properly dissuade people, those who will voluntarily do it. Um, Now, punishment can be done in two ways, as St. Thomas points out. Under one aspect, punishment whereby justice is restored through equality. So, in that sense, that type of justice that type of punishment really only works on somebody who has done something voluntarily. That's the only thing that makes sense. Well, the thing that comes to mind, I know I try to stay away from controversial things here, but when if a woman has been raped and she gets pregnant, the father of the child is a rapist. He's guilty. He's voluntarily sinned. The mother has not sinned. There's no sin in being raped. And the child is innocent, right? The child has done nothing wrong. So therefore, that kind of idea of using abortion, which means the death of the innocent child, seems to be wrong, right? Because the person who ends up getting punished in it, and I know abortion isn't intended to be punishment for children, but the person who takes the brunt of the consequences if the abortion happens is the child, and they haven't done anything voluntarily, they haven't sinned at all. If anything, is the father who should be getting something rather severe, not the child. Perhaps I shouldn't have gone down that road, but I did. Um, Punishment can also be as a medicine, and this not only uh, heals past sins, but also prevents future sins. And sometimes this can be done involuntarily. People who could be affected by the type of punishment, it could be done involuntarily. So, an example of this would be if the family is a mob family, mafia family. The more relevant thing today would be a gang family, however you want to define that, where crime is generational. Right? Every generation becomes part of this crime ring. If you can punish the father appropriately, you could perhaps um, prevent future sinning on behalf of the children, right? If the father is arrested and they lose all of their house, they lose all of their property, they lose all of their gains that they had from criminal activity, right? They're destroyed, right? They're left bare. This might be what might prevent the next generation of children from entering into that type of lifestyle, right? That type of career. uh, so, in some ways, the children haven't done anything wrong, but there is a preemptive uh, plan to try to prevent the children from going into that line of work. Now, this also can happen completely accidentally, right? If a person's if a father uh, is involved in a life of crime and they get caught and tried, sent to jail for life. Now the child is being raised without a father. Maybe a lot of the property and money they had has been confiscated because it was all from criminal activity. So now they are poor. So now they are a poor family and without a father. The child didn't deserve that, but that's the consequence of the father's sin. Right? So it can happen accidentally too. This isn't the intention of the criminal justice system isn't to punish the child, right? That's not the point. The point is to punish the father, but the consequence of punishing the father will be a punishment of the child too. So, but this isn't done in terms of restoring equality, right? It's not to be, it's not to punish the kid. Say, well, that guy killed somebody else's father, so some other kid doesn't have a father, so your kid won't get a father. Well, that's not the purpose of the equality. It's to punish somebody's innocent child, but it can be the consequence, right? So that can be possible. Um, and St. Thomas points out too that nobody should be punished in a spiritual way unless the sin is voluntary. So in that regard, if somebody is a doing terrible things, right? That they might be excommunicated from the sacraments. So they might be excommunicated. But you never pass that excommunication on to the innocent family members of that person. Right? So father is a mafia and he killed the priest. Maybe somebody said something in confession and he didn't know that the priest couldn't reveal what was said in confession, so he kills the priest. Right? The priest was putting pressure on him to quit being in the mob, and he kills the priest. So now he's excommunicated. Well, the child of that man is not excommunicated, right? Yeah. The guy might go to jail. Guy might get the death penalty. Guy might lose property, but he doesn't. The children of or the wife of the person is not punished spiritually. They're not excommunicated if they didn't do anything, right? If the wife was in on it, then she voluntarily did something, and now she can be punished too. But people who have not done anything voluntarily should not get punished in a spiritual sense, right? Because the purpose of the temporal punishment is to get people correct in the correct place spiritually. That's the point. Why are you throwing somebody in jail? Why are you depriving them of property? Why are they being deprived of freedom? To get them to a point of repentance, right? To get them to a point of changing their life. Right? That's the point. To kill them off spiritually would not be the correct thing, especially for somebody who didn't do something wrong. Because the point of even cutting somebody off spiritually is that they reform. Right? Why would you cut off the man who killed the priest from the sacraments? Well, because you want them to reform. If the person goes to confession and confesses his sin of killing the priest, he can go to confession again. Right? He can go to the Eucharist again. He's now a member of the community again. As unfair as that might sound to some people, right? He can come back, because the church is forgiving. Whereas if you are excommunicated against something you did voluntarily, right? Involuntarily, there's nothing you can repent of, right? What can you repent? You can't repent that you have a father that did something that's not a sin. So, uh, kind of an interesting section. So, in conclusion, vengeance is lawful. It's also can be virtuous, right? It's a special virtue because it has a particular purpose of turning people towards good in the form of medicine, right? The form of medicine it has to be prescribed specifically and accurately, not generally. Therefore, it's kind of a special, I think, right? And vengeance is taken on those who voluntarily sin, although the effects of sin may be on people who have not voluntarily sinned. Right? It can be on innocent people, it can be people who have been involuntarily dragged into this whole situation. Okay, well, this is question 108, and next topic we will move on to truth, question 109.